This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. I'm your host, Bob Price. We're setting aside our regular programming today to bring you a special Memorial Day edition of the Noon Report. We're going to start with Memorial Day remarks that were made by former President Ronald Reagan at Arlington National Cemetery in 1982 as we honor those who've paid the ultimate price in defense of this nation.
The sight before us is that of a strong and good nation that stands in silence and remembers those who were loved and who in return loved their countrymen enough to die for them. Yet we must try to honor them, not for their sakes alone, but for our own. And if words cannot repay the debt we owe these men, surely with our actions, we must strive to keep faith with them and with a vision that led them to battle and a final sacrifice. Our first obligation to them and ourselves is plain enough. The United States and the freedom for which it stands, the freedom for which they died, must endure and prosper. Their lives remind us that freedom is not bought cheaply. It has a cost. The willingness of some to give their lives so that others might live never fails to evoke in us a sense of wonder and mystery, and how they must have wished, in all the ugliness that war brings, that no other generation of young men to follow would have to undergo that same experience. As we honor their memory today, let us pledge that their lives, their sacrifices, their valor shall be justified and remembered for as long as God gives life to this nation. And let us also pledge to do our utmost to carry out what must have been their wish, that no other generation of young men will ever have to share their experiences and repeat their sacrifice.
That is former President Ronald Reagan at Arlington National Cemetery on May 31st, 1982. Next at noon, reflections from 3 Americans who lost loved ones in service to this country on the battlefield. They are 2 veterans and a Gold Star mother, and they're going to share about what this day means to them. The audio is courtesy of the Wounded Warrior Project.
My name is Dan Nevins. I was a staff sergeant in the United States Army.
My name is Tanya Oxendine, and I served in the United States Army.
I'm Mary Taluzzi, and I am a Gold Star mother.
Memorial Day is a challenging holiday, almost a personal development day for me, but a day that I try, at least for my family, to say, like, we celebrate because we live in the best nation on the planet because of the people we're honoring today.
It's more than just a day on the calendar. It's a chance to pause, to stop moving so fast, and to remember those who have sacrificed their lives, the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms.
Oh, Memorial Day is very special. I keep Daniel right here. Daniel is my son, and he was a 22-year-old Army sergeant.
Sergeant First Class Mike Connellini was my platoon sergeant. He was my boss, and he was killed in the same attack that took my legs.
His name is Staff Sergeant Francisco Martinez, and we served in the 82nd Airborne Division together, and he was killed in Baghdad, Iraq, November 4th, 2003.
For me, I try to celebrate, and I do, but I also take time to pause and reflect.
We can't forget. We cannot forget. You know, losing somebody is like having an empty chair. You know, you just pass by that thing all the time and it's just silence. Nobody is there. And that's not a good feeling. It's kind of an eerie feeling.
You know, but Memorial Day has become a day where I get to remember all the fun things about Dan. I get to remember his hugs that he would give me at the kitchen while I was cooking something or washing dishes, whatever.
Sort of like I measure myself against who I hope I would be that is worthy of the sacrifice.
Not having any family or anyone that served in the military, you could actually go to the closest military cemetery, and each state has, one or several. And if you'll just stop in front of a grave and read that name and see where they were at a certain time. It may be a Vietnam era, it may be Korea, it may be, Iraq or Afghanistan.
And it's okay to have the barbecue and to celebrate and do all that stuff. Take that moment of silence, that moment just to say, I don't know this person. I may have not worn the uniform, but again, I go back to the cost of freedom for us to live the life that we live.
And just realize what these people have done for you and continue to do, every day of their lives as they serve.
Veterans Day, thank a veteran. July 4th, thank everyone. Memorial Day specifically is to remember those who gave everything.
If you haven't lost a loved one or someone that you know, find out, Google somebody and just honor that person. And you can do it every year. That you can start a new tradition, right?
When you have a warrior that you have lost, you're not the only person that lost that warrior. And this Memorial Day, I hope that you do raise a glass and toast a person that you may know. And if you don't, if you see a veteran with a little hat on, don't say Happy Memorial Day. Just say, I hope you're having a good day, sir or ma'am. And that's all. And you'd be surprised how grateful, they would feel. I feel grateful just saying it.
No matter how you choose to celebrate, as long as with the intention, as long as you know. So the reason I'm having a barbecue today is to honor those who gave everything. The reason I'm taking a somber moment of reflection is to honor those who gave everything.
The greatest casualty
is being
forgotten.
That is Army Staff Sergeant Dan Nevins, Army veteran Tanya Oxendine, and Mary Toulouse, a Gold Star mother, and that audio courtesy of the Wounded Warrior Project. To help us understand more the history of Memorial Day, we turn next to Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications for Focus on the Family. Paul writes frequently about our military heroes, war history, and veterans in general. He spoke recently to our own Sarah Harnish. Here's some of that conversation.
It's a sober day. Of course, it's not a day we celebrate but commemorate. It dates back to the Civil War. It was called the Decoration Day because it was that special day that was set aside to decorate the graves of fallen soldiers. So, of course, those were fallen soldiers from the war between the North and the South. But then as the country grew and sadly, unfortunately, had other wars, World War I came, and then they began to expand its commemoration and encourage people to decorate the graves of all fallen soldiers from all different battles and all different wars.
What is the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day? I think there are some people that get the days confused.
No, for sure. It's a common mistake. Memorial Day, of course, is a day, as you indicated, to remember and honor the 1 million-plus men and women who have died in uniform defending America. Veterans Day, by contrast, is the special day to celebrate all those who have worn a uniform. Memorial Day, of course, is in May. Veterans Day is in November. Veterans Day used to be called Armistice Day and was actually first celebrated to mark the end of World War I. That was on the 11th day of the month, the 11th hour of the 11th day in 1918. So that's a day where if you have a veteran in your family, please acknowledge him. But for Memorial Day, we remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
One for the living and one for those who have gone on. What is the best way to comfort those who've lost someone?
As Christians, prayer is the most powerful way. I think, though, it seems to me people always appreciate being asked about their loved one. And so it's sometimes uncomfortable to ask about someone who was lost in a conflict, in a war. But I think that's a wonderful way to mourn with them and to grieve with them, is to give them an opportunity to talk about them and to keep their memory alive by asking about their service and asking about their personality and what they did and what they loved to do.
You hear a lot about Christian nationalism, that we shouldn't mix faith in politics, faith in our laws, faith in our schools, faith in the military. But if we don't pause and know the world that we live in, and you and I appreciate this being in news and having such a background in it, we can't influence the world that we live in. Can you speak to speaking up?
Oh, boy, thank you for asking that question. I think it's so important, and it's those who don't want us to speak up will often throw out these labels of Christian nationalism. I think that is a bit of a label that, unfortunately, many socially conservative Christians are unfairly and recklessly slapped with if we try and be patriotic. I don't really know any serious Christians who say they're Christian nationalists, which would be someone who puts their country above God. And that's really the definition of what a true, if you want to use that term, Christian nationalist would be. But I think, serious Christians know that their ultimate and eternal allegiance is to Jesus, and that they can still take the Pledge of Allegiance, but still have ultimate allegiance to Jesus.
Memorial Day is well known for its parades and tap songs and gun salutes. What are some things, though, that you can do at home, maybe to help your children understand the significance of today?
Oh, sure. Fly your flag. I mean, that's a good one. That's something that, everybody can easily do. But talk about it. Talk about what Memorial Day is and personalize it. Talk about maybe there's someone in your family lineage who sacrificed in the service, but maybe someone that you know. It's always good when you can put a name to a number. And pray for those families. There's services on television. If you can't get to one, if you can't get to a parade, I know in our home growing up, we had a parade in our town, but my mom and dad always wanted to watch the service from Washington, D.C. and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and that made an impression on me. And look, we love books. Bring your child to the library and read about it. Read about the great history of our country.
What Memorial Day memory has stayed with you? You mentioned Arlington National Cemetery and your parents putting that on the television. Is there anything over the years that you're not going to forget?
I would go to the parade in our town on my dad's shoulders. I'm 54, and I remember watching doughboys in the World War I uniform marching down our main street. It made an impression on me, but I didn't fully appreciate the fact that I was looking at soldiers from World War I. I mean, which seems so ancient now. And then I got to march in it. We had community-driven schools and teams and scouts, and then we would do a ceremony down, it was called Silver Lake Park, where I was on Long Island. And to see the names etched in the granite, that made an impression on me because they'd had a class year. And I remember thinking, wow, those people went to the same school I went to, and they're up on that wall, and they're no longer with us. That made an impression on me.
The last words that come to mind on Memorial Day are peace or reconciliation. But in the end, we know that nothing is wasted, and God turns hard stories into power stories. In a time of war, with what's happening in the Middle East right now, can you speak to biblical peace?
My goodness, Jesus, of course, is called the Prince of Peace, right? And biblical peace is not just absence of war. It's, of course, peace in our hearts, peace in our minds, in our souls. I think that's what Americans so crave, is this idea that they strive and seek a more peaceful world. But it's not just the laying down of arms, but I think it's a more peaceful relationship with their loved ones and their community, and that's what we all strive for.
One of the most powerful messages coming out of a day like Memorial Day is that chance to pause and reflect over what has been given to all of us because of the sacrifice of our brave soldiers. Can you explain the gravity and meaning of Memorial Day to a younger generation that's hooked on phones and internet and TikTok? How can you explain the significance of today to those that have not lost someone in combat?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, and it may be even close to impossible to fully communicate that because you're speaking of such profound topics and profound truths. I think it's even more important for our kids or grandchildren to see how we respond. Are we reverent? Are we grateful? Even are we emotional about it? I think that's good. And I think, take them to the parades and take them to the services and take them to the concert. They're going to have to make this their own.
If you could share one message with active duty service members and military families, what would it be?
I would say thank you, which sounds insufficient, but it is from the bottom of my heart to thank them for their service, for their willingness to sacrifice their life. I'd also encourage them to hang in there because we need them. We need them to be protecting us and to be serving us, and we are committed to praying for them, not just on Memorial Day or Veterans Day or the 4th of July, but really we should be lifting up our men and women in uniform every day.
What does freedom mean to you?
Well, it's a gift, first and foremost, but it's a real delicate one. I think freedom is fragile. I think it's, manifests in many ways. It's being able to share my faith, but not be reckless in doing so. It means I can say anything. but I shouldn't always say everything. I think it means I'm able to go anywhere I want, but also recognizing that it might not be wise to go everywhere. It's a liberation, but it's a responsibility. And I think we tend to take it for granted.
Powerful words there from Paul Boturo at Focus on the Family on this Memorial Day edition of the Noon Report. One of my favorite things to do on this day is watch the Steven Spielberg film Saving Private Ryan. Set in 1944 following the Normandy invasion, it follows a squad of U.S. soldiers led by Captain John Miller, who's portrayed by the actor Tom Hanks. Their mission is to go behind enemy lines to locate and bring home one Private James Ryan. He's played by the actor Matt Damon. In the film, Ryan's three brothers are killed in action, and a band of Army Rangers are under orders to bring home the last surviving paratrooper. Toward the end of the movie, Tom Hanks' character is mortally wounded while defending a bridge. His dying words to Private Ryan are as follows: "Earn this. Earn it." Years later, Private Ryan, now an old man, is standing at the grave of Captain Miller and makes the following observation.
My family is with me today. They wanted to come with me. To be honest with you, I wasn't sure how I'd feel coming back here. Every day, I think about what you said to me that day on the bridge. I've tried to live my life the best I could. I hope that was enough. I hope that at least in your eyes, I've earned what all of you have done for me.
Gets me still today. That's from the film Saving Private Ryan, produced by Paramount Pictures and directed by Steven Spielberg. You're tuned in to the Noon Report, a Memorial Day edition on Family Life. More after this. Thank you very much, Ken McKinley. Welcome back to a special Memorial Day edition of the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and we're setting aside our regular programming today so we can honor the fallen, those who've died in service to this country. If you've lost a loved one in the military, we at Family Life salute you and the sacrifices made by your entire family. Today, the poem In Flanders Fields is often recited. It was written by a Canadian Army doctor in 1915 and is spoken from the voice of the dead. John McCrae penned this poem after the death of his best friend during World War I on a battlefield in Flanders, Belgium. We'd like to play that poem for you now.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
One of my all-time favorite poems there, In Flanders Fields, written by Canadian Army medic John McCrae, following the death of his best friend in World War I. Sadly, McCrae himself would not live to see the end of the war. He died just a few years later of pneumonia and meningitis while treating the war wounded in Western Europe. Our final interview today, this Memorial Day, is with Chaplain Matt Suter of the Bath VA in Steuben County, New York. Matt offers some poignant insights on the horrors of war and the high cost of freedom. Matthew, we are so pleased to have you with us today. It's Memorial Day, but unfortunately we have to begin with a little Memorial Day etiquette because a lot of folks confuse Memorial Day with Veterans Day, which is a common thing. But if you would explain the difference a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So Veterans Day began at the conclusion of World War I. At the time, it was called Armistice Day. That was the day the shooting stopped to end the most terrible war the world had ever seen up until that point. So Memorial Day is different. Instead of a day of feasting and celebration, it should be rightly understood as a day of mourning, a day for grief. So on Memorial Day, we do not rejoice in victories won or offer thanks to veterans. Instead, we set aside the day to remember the troops who did not return home. So in Christian terms, consider the difference between, say, Resurrection Day and Good Friday for an example of a celebration versus a solemn assembly.
That is really good. I never thought of it in that way, but that makes a lot of sense. So if you would, if you know, when and how did Memorial Day begin?
So in terms of a national Memorial Day, we could point to 1868. At that time, it was an observance called Decoration Day. If you'll remember with me, that the Civil War had only ended in April of 1865. There had been many local observances prior to 1868, but that was the year that it became a national event. There was a large national organization called the Grand Army of the Republic that sort of spearheaded making it a national observance. And so the day was set aside for placing flowers upon the graves of dead soldiers and I love this part, praying for the arrival of permanent peace.
Some have suggested that Waterloo, New York, which is not too far away, is kind of the birthplace of what we now know as Memorial Day. There's some controversy there as to who can actually claim it, but do they make a good case, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I think, quite honestly, places all over the country were deeply affected by the Civil War. Everybody knew they needed, it's a human need to grieve, to memorialize. And so the fact that it started in many places across the country sort of simultaneously, completely valid. It's easier to measure the history by when everybody started doing it on the same day. And so that's why I decided to land on 1868.
Yeah. And today is a day where people will say the unofficial start of summer. So we've got picnics and parades and everyone's off from school and everyone's having a good time and, we're just living it up and yucking it up. But then again, we think about what this day is, a day to almost, as you said, grieve. I'm married into a military family, so I'm around military people all the time. When I go up to them today and observe Memorial Day, how should I do that?
So Memorial Day these days, flowers are still placed on graves, often at formal ceremonies using wreaths. That'll actually be happening on Memorial Day here in Bath at our cemetery as well. The day is perfect for gathering with loved ones to consider the cost of the freedoms we have. So if people like you have family or friends who died at war, recall those deceased people to mind. Consider visiting their graves. One of the best ways for us who are living to avoid war in the future is to remember how much it cost in the past. And so this is especially important to troops who saw one of their friends die. They don't want to hear your thanks on Memorial Day. Veterans want to remember the comrade who quite possibly took a bullet or shrapnel for them, that might have hit them instead.
Yeah. That thank you for your service line is great, but save it for Veterans Day.
Right. Or Armed Forces Day or Flag Day or July 4th. We have lots of holidays to celebrate and thank troops. Memorial Day is different.
Yeah. You had mentioned the Civil War. What an awful war that was. I love to read up on stats and statistics and figures and trivia, and I read that nearly half of all the Americans who have died in war died during the Civil War. Almost half. World War II, a close second, followed by World War I, then Vietnam and Korea. The Revolutionary War took the lives of approximately 25,000 people. We won't call them Americans because I don't know if they were yet that officially. And then you compare that to like the wars that you saw actually mentioned in Matthew, and war on terrorism, which has claimed approximately 7,000 lives. So by comparison, when you look at all these different wars, it seems to me at least we're surviving war more. Do you agree with that? And if so, why is that, Matthew?
That's definitely true. And war is more survivable, if I can say that, for a number of reasons, actually. It's not any one reason. So the most significant is related to disease rather than combat. So for one example of this, consider the First World War. That was in the 19-teens, right? Yeah. American combat deaths were in the area of 51,000. While disease claimed 63,000.
Wow.
So this was also the case in every war prior to then. The fact is, when you take hundreds of thousands of people and put them together in one place with inadequate hygiene, people are going to get sick and they're going to pass it around. So by way of another example, and this one very much more contemporary, Marine Corps basic training is 13 weeks long, right? So every single member of my platoon, which was like 80 guys, was sick for part of those 13 weeks. I actually completed my swim qualification with an upper respiratory infection that ensured I couldn't get a full breath of air. That was kind of challenging.
Yeah.
So I had the advantage of access to showers and to antibiotics and to doctors, but that wouldn't be guaranteed in a war zone, and it was non-existent for most of history.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, too, that war is a 24/7 event. So for somebody to get a shower or to visit a doctor means somebody else with a weapon has to keep watch so that that can happen. The Civil War was actually the first time we had any idea about microbiology, and we didn't know very well what we were even looking at. So an example of that actually from the Civil War Museum in Harrisburg, they discovered that if they amputated a limb that had been hit, like say you get shot in the lower arm or the lower leg, they would actually choose to amputate most of the time, even though there's no reason to remove the limb. Now, the reason that they did that, they would amputate on an angle and they would fold over the flesh to use the body as its own bandage. They didn't know why this worked, but when they did it, infections were less common.
I was interested in your own military service. I had a little chance to hear some of your testimony, and I said to myself, this is a guy I've got to interview on the radio. If you would just explain your own military service, how you wound up where you're at now as chaplain of the Bath VA.
Right. So I grew up in a Christian home, went off to college, and while I was there, I stopped going to church. It just wasn't my home church, and I didn't make it a priority. That process eventually led me to enlist in the Marine Corps Reserve in 2005. I served until 2011, so that included one trip to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. My interest in working with veterans really began in 2009. One of my staff sergeants shared his story with some of the guys in the platoon. Now, years before I ever met him, he had witnessed the death of another Marine that was a family friend. So, he comes home from war, he seeks out professional help, but he actually found that talking with other Marines was more helpful for him than talking with therapists. Now, civilian therapists are very good at what they do. They mean well, but troops just don't feel that they can talk as freely. So my job allows me to combine the two, both the professional side and as a comrade in arms. Now, for my part, I was until the fall of 2009 what you'd call a carnal Christian. I was too sinful to thrive in my faith, but too godly-minded to enjoy my sin. I knew all of the truths from childhood, but I had always gone to church before leaving my parents' home. But I was powerless to live the way I knew I should, and too ashamed even to pray. So that meant I was miserable almost all of the time. I didn't fit in at church. I didn't fit in among Marines. And that year, 2009, was when Jesus intervened in my life. He set me free from my destructive habits. He defeated my sin so completely that my desire for it was gone. What a gift repentance is.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on today, Matthew, was to encourage our active duty soldiers and our veterans as well to remember those who have paid and given their lives in service of this country, but also just talk about some of the struggles. We see the movies. How many war movies are out there? Is that what it's like? Is that what it's really like? I wonder a lot of the time how accurate that is to what the real thing is. And in your profession as a clinical chaplain, some wounds are never heal. Sometimes it's the amputations that are easier to heal than the psychological things dealing with the military. Can you talk to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we have an understanding from how we grew up about how the world works. And so we have very good, very biblical ideas that, God is good and he is all powerful and he has all wisdom. And then you go to war and you see things that should not be, full stop. Like what I just witnessed shouldn't happen ever anywhere, and yet I saw it, or I was a part of it sometimes, right? And so there are some movies and TV shows that sort of get at this, the fact that war is an unmitigated disaster every time it happens. Like, it isn't glorious. We play the music, we have the marching bands, but that's not what war is. It's almost a coping mechanism. It's like, war is like a famine or an earthquake. Like, it just destroys everything it touches.
Well said, Matthew. I could go on for another half an hour here, but I just want to give you the microphone in conclusion as we remember those, our friends, our families who are no longer with us today because of that sacrifice, because of that courage. Heroes come pretty cheap these days, but not if they're wearing a uniform. Those are our real heroes. And if you would just final thoughts as we reflect on another Memorial Day.
So societally, we have a false belief that Christianity is something that can be pursued individually. I myself was one of those lone wolf Christians in the past, and it almost destroyed me. Recall with me that Jesus set out to build a church. That's another word for a community, assembly, or gathering. Authentic Christian faith demands we gather with others, and it's in the friction of these often messy relationships that our growth happens. The self-reliance that we teach service members to make them good warriors does not serve them well when they return. So think of our faith as a three-legged stool. We need the Spirit of God, the Word of God, and the people of God to remain upright.
Chaplain Matthew Suter at the Bath VA, thank you so much. We salute you and all those who've given their lives on this very solemn, most solemn of days.
Thank you, Bob, for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Matt. And our thanks as well to Paul Boturo at Focus on the Family for helping us honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to this nation. And that will conclude our broadcast this Monday afternoon, Memorial Day, May 25th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.